Hey, Biology 102, let's take a look here at our last kingdom within domain Eukarya, and that being our own Kingdom Animalia. Kingdom Animalia, of course, it's the most fascinating to us for many reasons, probably mostly because we are a member of this kingdom. And one of the things that I've always thought was just amazing is that little colonial flagellated protists that you're seeing up there in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. From that origin, from that ancestral organism, we have a monophyletic origin of our kingdom. And it is a relatively young kingdom. Look here again that we are more closely related to kingdom fungi than we are to kingdom plantae, the other multicellular kingdom within domain Eukarya. And it's that heterotrophy, the fact that we have to ingest our food from external sources, that, it's through that feeding mechanism that we are more closely related to the fungi. So I'd love to go into some of the evolutionary details of this more, but it really is beyond the scope of the course. And you see the oldest animal fossils appearing in the fossil record right around 500 million years ago. And what we're going to do in this lecture is look at that great diversity of organisms, and we're going to just focus in on a few of the 35 phyla that exist within Kingdom Animalia. So those of you that have studied the whole kit and caboodle, don't worry. We're not going to go through everything like you may have done in courses previous to this one. So going through what I like to call our laundry list of characteristics, here we are again in domain Eukarya with Kingdom Animalia. These are eukaryotic multicellular organisms, and their cells lack cell walls. They are heterotrophic by ingestion. Their excess carbohydrate is stored as glycogen. We're going to talk more about glycogen as a storage carbohydrate when we do human nutrition. But this is just a way of the excess carbohydrate in the diet being stored first off as glycogen, short term in the liver and the muscles, and then being converted on over into fat if that glycogen is not metabolized. These organisms in Kingdom Animalia reproduce sexually. There are some asexual reproducers, but they are fewer and further between than we've seen in our other kingdoms within domain Eukarya. Kingdom Animalia, you see the greatest diversity of body plans. We're going to look at radial versus bilateral symmetry, internal, incomplete versus complete digestive tracts. We're going to see a lot more organization as we move through the phyla within Kingdom Animalia. The other key things, this is the first time we're talking about nervous and muscle tissue. These two types of tissues are unique to animals, but not all animals have them. And lastly, development in terms of embryonic development and reaching sexual maturity. It can either be direct, as it is in humans, it is a straight line, or it can involve metamorphosis, where the organism goes through stages of development, and oftentimes those stages have very distinct morphology. So the interesting thing to know is the vast array of animal species diversified in a very relatively short period of time known as the Cambrian Explosion, and that occurred about 540 million years ago. And I always love the artist's rendition of the Cambrian Explosion because you get this tremendous diversity of body plans, body armor, feeding mechanisms, all sorts of things. And again, this is an artist's rendition. But we do know that trilobites, let me show you a trilobite. We know that organisms such as this truly existed. We know that there were Cnidarians, very similar to jellyfish. And jellyfish are very ancient organisms. Why did this happen at this time? This was coming right off of a mass extinction event where after the Earth's environment stabilized, you had the emergence of a tremendous amount of predator-prey relationships that selected for diverse adaptations of feeding, mobility, and protection. And also the increase in carbon dioxide, that was good, atmospheric oxygen. That increase in atmospheric oxygen supported mobility. Organisms, just like we see in the plant kingdom, could get larger. In terms of animals, you need lots of ATP to adenosine triphosphate to fuel muscle contractions, so that with this oxygen-rich environment now, you had the ability of aerobic cellular respiration that produces a lot more ATP than does anaerobic cellular respiration. So we're going to look at just a few of the phyla here, and today we're going to focus on the invertebrate phyla within Kingdom Animalia. And we're going to see that from this algal protist, I am really butchering this, you all. Forgive me. Can you tell it's early in the morning? From this ancestral protist, we have, from our flagellated colonial animal-like protists, we get the diversification first into sponges. These are organisms that lack true tissues, whereas all the other animal phyla we're going to look at, the organisms possess true tissues, a group of cells collected together to perform a specific function. We're then going to separate the remaining phyla based on the body symmetry, whether it is radial or bilateral. And then within the bilateral groups of organisms, we're going to see some other key characteristics as we move through the different phyla of Kingdom Animalia. So, sponges. They lack specialized cells. Remember, they have no true tissues. They are sessile filter feeders. They are mostly marine. And you do have a few freshwater sponges, but for the vast majority of the species, they are found in marine environments. And the way that this, they filter feed. And so they bring in the water through these openings, the pores in the body of the sponge. It bring it into a central cavity, extract the nutrients, and allow the water to flow out at the top of the sponge. And sponges are pretty much, polymorphic. They just look like a blob. And think about your bath sponges that you can buy that are natural sponges. No two are the exact same shape unless they have been trimmed to be the exact same shape. So this is one that there is no symmetry. They lack true tissues, but we do have other characteristics there of Kingdom Animalia. Primarily, they are heterotrophic, but there are some others. Now we're going to divide everything else based on body symmetry. With radial symmetry, the parts radiate from the center, so any slice through the central axis divides the organism into mirror images. Whereas with bilateral symmetry, there is only one way you can slice it to have a distinct left and right that form mirror images of each other. So let's start off with Cnidarians. These are your jellyfish. These are your comb jellies. I think they're a very beautiful group of organisms, but ouch, they can get you when you're in the ocean. These organisms are radially symmetrical. They do have true tissues. They are carnivorous. That's why they're trying to sting you. You are their prey. They have a gastrovascular cavity, and they are marine organisms. So this is the first time we're seeing this gastrovascular cavity. The way I have taught this for going on nearly 20 years, it's kind of gross, but they are what I call one-holers. The food comes in the single opening of the body, and the waste products leave through that single opening in the body. So that you bring water into the gastrovascular cavity, they bring their prey into the gastrovascular cavity, they extract the nutrients and expel the waste remains out that same opening of the gastrovascular cavity. One of the things I wanted to include that this version of the textbook does not are the structures of the stinging cells that this photograph right here is zooming in on. At the end of those tentacles, when you get stung by a jellyfish or a sea anemone or any of the Cnidarians, at the very end, you have these special structures called cnidocytes that will stick out this thread-like structure that contains the stinging cells. And that's some of those long thread-like structures on jellyfish that they will wrap around their prey. The purpose of the sting is to immobilize the prey so that then they can begin to digest the prey. Next, we're moving on to the mollusks. These are bilaterally symmetrical organisms that now we're seeing a complete digestive tract in this group of organisms, meaning you have a mouth and you have an anus. So these are two-holers. Remember, gastrovascular cavity, one-holer, complete digestive tract, two-holers. And you're going to see with organisms with a complete digestive tract, the complexity of the organs you see of the digestive tract varies a little bit, but this is starting to resemble something you have seen with different dissections you may have done in high school or other courses you've taken previous to this one. Mollusks can be both marine as well as freshwater organisms. They can be terrestrial organisms, such as snails. But terrestrial snails always had to be found in moist environments just because of the nature of gas exchange across the skin of these organisms. So here's some lovely different groups of mollusks. They are from teeny tiny snails all the way up to octopi and giant squid. There's a lot of seafood here in your mollusks. We're going to see a lot of seafood as we get into another group of organisms on down the line. Hey, marine organisms, Dr. Welch likes seafood. You know, I always think, can I eat that? Yes or no? Another marine organism that many of you have seen, echinoderms or starfish or sea urchins or sand dollars. These also have a complete digestive tract. They also have an endoskeleton that is under a very thin layer of it's not true skin, but a very thin covering on top of the endoskeleton. That endoskeleton is made of calcium carbonate type material, just like the shell that you see on many marine mollusks. These organisms are bilaterally symmetrical in their larval stage, but then they metamorphose into radially symmetrical adults. And one of the things I enjoy that he brings out in the reading is these are the only organisms that have a water-based vascular system. They move substances throughout their bodies with seawater. And this is the only group of organisms that is known to do that. So another interesting fact there about echinoderms. Flatworms. Many of you have seen the little planaria. These guys right here. Come on, Arrow. These right here. A lot of high school biology projects will use planaria in lab activities. These are bilaterally symmetrical organisms that were back to a gastrovascular cavity. And I want to point out that the author of this chapter, or of this textbook, organizes the invertebrate phyla based more on symmetry. And so you're going to see a flip-flop in the type of digestive tract between gastrovascular cavity and a complete digestive tract. Other textbooks I've used have organized it differently. So just find your own. We'll come back to that figure I began the lecture with as a way to wrap this all together. Flatworms, including the blood flukes, including tapeworms, also exhibit what's called cephalization. And that's where you begin to see a true head region of the organism. So we also see cephalization in the mollusks to some point, particularly with the octopi. But here, as this group, all the organisms within the flatworms will have a head region. The other group of organisms he covers that are right in between the flatworms and, to some extent, the next group we're going to see a slide on the annelids are the roundworms or the nematodes. And I'll let you read through that there in the textbook. It's an important group to know about. There's really nothing too striking about the phyla Nematoda, which is why I don't have a slide on it. But it is the group that heartworms that can infect dogs. They belong to the nematode group. Trichinosis, which is a worm, I don't want to use the word infection. There can be cysts containing trichinosis worms inside of pork products. And so that's one of the reasons why pork has to be cooked so thoroughly. This doesn't occur as much as it used to several decades ago. But I'll let you read that about Phylum Nematoda there in the reading. And it's in the same section, section 10.4, as the other worms that he discusses. But moving on in the order he has this in the chapter, Now we're up to something all of us have seen probably many, many times, and those are the annelids, such as earthworms. These have bilateral symmetry, a complete digestive tract. Here we're now seeing a closed circulatory system where the blood is not mixing with any other fluids in the body. And the major evolutionary change we see here in this group, body segmentation. That body segmentation that you see in the annelids becomes much more pronounced as we move up to the arthropods. And this is where things start to get really fun. Phylum Arthropoda, you have bilaterally symmetrical organisms with complete digestive tracts. Not only are those bodies segmented, but now each segment takes on a special role. You have on this nice large grasshopper down here, you have the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. So you have specialized sections working together in the body plan. These organisms have jointed appendages, and also they have an exoskeleton made of chitin, just like we saw in Kingdom Fungi. And that's another one of the links between Kingdom Fungi and Kingdom Animalia is that chitin as a supporting mechanism that forms the exoskeleton here. So some of your groups of arthropods are the spiders. There are the crustaceans, like crabs, yummy. There are millipedes and centipedes, and there is just an enormous, absolutely gargantuan diversity of insects. And I love this quote by Thomas Eisner from Cornell. Bugs are not only going to inherit the earth, they own it now. So we might as well make peace with the landlord. You can take that as you wish. Bugs are everywhere. Bugs play important roles in ecosystems. I'll admit when I get a great big hairy spider in my house, I don't like it. But at the same time, I'm not one of those folks that has my house sprayed for bugs every single month because I don't like the chemicals being in the house. Nothing better in your good old shoe to smack a good old, big spider on the kitchen floor. But when they're outside, that's their world and they are perfectly welcome there. So what we've done is to go through the different invertebrate phyla of Kingdom Animalia. And I invite you to organize your notes for this section based on the presence or lack of tissues, the type of body plan, whether it's radially symmetrical or bilaterally symmetrical, and then form the patterns that are present with the complete and incomplete digestive tracts, or the complete digestive tract versus a gastrovascular cavity, as well as once you get up there to the annelids, the presence of segments that then in the arthropods becomes much more pronounced, and we get that the regional specialization of the body plan. What we have left to do for Kingdom Animalia is to look at Phylum Chordata in our next lecture, and that's where we'll look at the diversity of vertebrates, including humans. Have a great day.